When I first came to World Wrestling Entertainment, not a single person respected me.
Backstage heat is a term described when a wrestler has a falling out with other wrestlers and/or management backstage because their behavior is seen out of line. Over the years, there have been numerous incidents where a wrestler has had backstage heat and has been forced to rebuild relationships and adjust their behavior in order to keep their position on the card, or even their job. Sometimes this behavior doesn't change and the WWE is forced to act by way of disciplining the said wrestler, and sometimes the wrestler is given the benefit of the doubt and allowed to continue in their negative ways. But who were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WWE wrestlers who were forced to change their attitude backstage. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 1. Muhammad Hassan. The Muhammad Hassan character was one of the most controversial in WWE history.
You look at us differently now, and don't say you don't.
Debuting in 2005, the idea for the character was in essence a wrestler of Jordanian-Palestinian descent demanding relief from the increased prejudice and stereotypes following the 9/11 attacks. However, it was Hassan's attitude backstage that caused him to encounter problems with other wrestlers. The most notable backstage incident came following the 2005 Royal Rumble. Hassan approached legendary wrestler Eddie Guerrero backstage and requested that Eddie stopped using Hassan's finisher, the camel clutch. What Hassan didn't realize was that it was Eddie's father, Gordy Guerrero, who invented the move in the first place. Hassan was taken to the infamous wrestler's court for the incident and was ordered to pay for the entire locker room's $4,000 bar tab. However, it was reported that most of the locker room poured their drinks on the floor to show their disliking of the young wrestler. In the summer of 2005, Hassan would be gone from the company due to pressure to get rid of the character from SmackDown's television network after they aired an insensitive segment a few days following the 7/7 attacks in London. Number 2. Buff Bagwell. Buff Bagwell was one of the names that fans expected to do extremely well following WWE's purchase of WCW in 2001. He had the looks and the charisma that Vince McMahon notably loves, but his attitude backstage ultimately led him to having a very short stint in the company. Buff made his debut on the 2nd July 2001 edition of Raw, and he would face Booker T in the main event for the WCW title in a match that is well known for being one of the worst in Raw history. The match was so bad that it made Vince drop the idea of having WCW exist as its own television show. The following week, Buff arrived at the Raw taping where he was informed he was being released from his contract due to complaints that his behavior backstage was highly inappropriate. There were reports that on the 3rd July 2001 SmackDown tapings, Buff faked an injury in order to get time off, which naturally didn't sit well with management or Buff's fellow wrestlers. Chavo Guerrero appeared on the Wire Ended podcast and discussed Buff's backstage attitude in WWE. Guerrero stated, "I think Buff pissed off the wrong people. Bradshaw was out to get him and other people were out to get him, and I don't know the whole story I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. I heard his mum call the office asking, 'Why is my son?' I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if it happened. But it's just, if you get those rumors circulating, that's just never good. That's never really good for you. That's kind of what happened. I wasn't in the office, I don't know why they let him go or the situation behind." Number 3. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan on numerous occasions has had heat backstage. This despite him being one of the biggest names in wrestling and pop culture. One of the most notable times this occurred was in 2002, and Hogan somehow had backstage heat before he even returned to WWE, as talent didn't want Hogan, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall back in the WWE, meaning that all three had heat the moment it was announced that they had signed deals. Hogan's heat came from stories of being extremely problematic backstage in WCW and being unwilling to put over younger talent. Hogan then had to fix his reputation backstage by building new relationships and working with younger talent such as Edge, Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar.
It's over! Hollywood Hulk Hogan can't continue!
5 years later, he found himself having more backstage heat following the 15th anniversary of Raw. Hogan believed the backstage heat surfaced because he didn't say hello to CM Punk backstage. Speaking on the Stone Cold podcast, he revealed, "I walked in the dressing room and there's this guy named CM Punk. I didn't know who he was and I heard that I had heat because I came back and didn't say hello to him when I walked through the hallway. I remember that night flying in with RVD from California and I was going through so much crap and my whole life was falling apart. When I walked through that dressing room, all I could think about was I just needed to get home and fix my life. I don't remember seeing, meeting, talking or disrespecting anybody that day." To this day, CM Punk still hates Hulk Hogan's guts. Man, he can really hold a grudge, can't he? Number 4. HBK. Shawn Michaels' first WWE run was notable for attaining HBK as a reputation for being the most problematic wrestler of all time. Infamously, his involvement in the Montreal Screwjob certainly did him no favors in this regard. At one stage, wrestlers backstage were convinced that he wouldn't put over Stone Cold in the main event at WrestleMania 14, which resulted in The Undertaker taping his fist backstage to ensure that he did the job. More recently, it was discovered during an interview with Bret Hart that HBK made The Rock extremely uncomfortable in '97 during a backstage confrontation. Hart stated, "I remember Shawn Michaels coming into the dressing room and dressing down poor Dwayne. Shawn came in and just dressed him down and he chewed him out. And I believe HBK told The Rock to never do a top rope dropkick ever again because that was his move. That's what he was mad about, and then he slammed the door and he walked out." HBK would take 4 years off before he returned in 2002, and he had to repair all the torn relationships from the years prior. He was seemingly successful at doing this and had a tremendous second run in WWE, which lasted for 8 years.
Shawn Michaels' career is over.
Oh, and the match we shouldn't speak of. Number 5. Triple H. Triple H's backstage problems began when he started dating Stephanie McMahon in early 2000s. There were some talents who believed that Triple H was dating Stephanie to secure a position at the top of the card. Whether this is true or not is unclear, as Triple H was virtually already at the top of the card by the time himself and Stephanie had begun dating. Then, between 2002 and 2005, Triple H wasn't exactly the most popular talent backstage. He decided to beat RVD, Booker T and Randy Orton, thus killing their babyface pushes, as this was just seen as Triple H trying to maintain his position as the face of the company. In later years, Triple H seemingly got a better reputation backstage as he would transition into a backstage role and senior executive position in WWE. As of 2020, he's seemingly well liked, and lots of ex-WWE talent have mentioned how they've enjoyed working with Triple H in a lot of areas. Number 6. CM Punk. It should come as no surprise to anyone that someone as opinionated as CM Punk had heat backstage during his WWE run. Jim Ross revealed in an interview that Punk's heat mainly surfaced because he was so different to the normal WWE superstars. JR stated, "All I got from anybody negative about CM Punk was that he was a different breed of cat. He can be a strange guy, and that's because he was not overly extroverted. So in other words, he wasn't fake." Because that was so contrary to the normal behavior of a top guy in any wrestling territory that I've ever been, any of them, that he was just a different breed of cat and folks did not know how to deal with him. Simple as that, bad communication, and he didn't have the support from the front office that he should have had. This ultimately led to Punk dropping the world title in 2008, and luckily managed to adjust his backstage behavior, as by the next year, he would once again be world champion. Number 7. JBL. It's well known that JBL had a strong reputation for being a bully backstage. There are stories of him bullying talent such as Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys when they first came into WWE. But once JBL transitioned into a single star in 2004, it was clear that these backstage antics needed to be stopped if he was going to succeed at a top level. Once he won the WWE title in the summer of 2004, fans and critics alike assumed that JBL had fixed his poor behavior and the backstage issues had been resolved. However, just 2 years later, it was reported that he was heavily involved in the bullying of The Miz. This behavior seemingly didn't change when JBL retired, as it was reported that he was bullying Mauro Ranallo in 2017, which unfortunately led to him leaving the SmackDown brand. Now, JBL is one of those cases where he is friends with the right people backstage, meaning that he normally gets away with everything. Number 8. John Cena. Long before John Cena was seemingly beloved by everyone, there was a time period where he was hated by the fan base, and this was somewhat thanks to his backstage behavior. Numerous incidents from Cena's time as face of the company led to him having heat backstage. One of the more notable cases was SummerSlam 2010, where Cena ensured that he would win the match for Team WWE and left Team Nexus with a huge loss on pay-per-view. This despite everyone else in the match telling Cena that it was completely the wrong call. This, amongst other political moves, didn't portray Cena in the best light backstage, to say the least. To his credit, he changed his behavior. In the years after the Nexus match, Cena would put over the likes of Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles and Bray Wyatt, which has somewhat repaired his reputation backstage. Number 9. The Miz. The Miz had it tough during his first few years in WWE. He was virtually seen as a joke by many and was seen as a failed reality star who simply wanted the WWE spotlight. His heat backstage was so bad that at one stage he was even kicked out of the locker room by Chris Benoit and JBL. The Miz had to scratch and claw his way to fix this reputation, despite him literally doing nothing wrong. By his account, he was just eating chicken backstage in the locker room, although he might have got some crumbs in the wrestlers' bags. But in order to fix his reputation, The Miz worked hard at getting better in the ring with seemingly every match. By 2010, 4 years after The Miz was kicked out of the locker room, he was WWE Champion and would main event WrestleMania 27 alongside John Cena the year after. By 2020, The Miz would be one of the most decorated superstars in history, earning the respect of fans and his peers along the way. And number 10, Randy Orton. Is there any surprise? When Randy Orton debuted in 2002 and was instantly presented as a star, it rubbed people the wrong way backstage. This, combined with Orton's poor attitude, led to Orton being extremely unpopular with his peers. He would comment on this during a 2020 interview, stating, "My attitude when I was in my mid-20s, I think I walked around with a chip on my shoulder. I think it came across as me being stuck up or a narcissist. I think that was kind of cover for me and my insecurities. And you wouldn't think it, but a lot of the guys and the girls in the WWE locker room are insecure. We're human beings and we're out there wearing next to nothing every week on television." Now, Orton naturally repaired his damaged reputation throughout the years and is now a 14-time world champion and is respected and beloved by the majority of the locker room and is even seen as a locker room leader, which is a stark contrast to his early days of his career. But there you have it, guys. 10 WWE wrestlers who were forced to change their attitude backstage. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.